Welcome to another episode of the WCPO High School Insider podcast. I'm your host, Mike Dyer. Today I have a conversation with ScoutingOhio.com director Mark Porter. We talk about all things high school football. We just wrapped up this unique shortened Ohio high school football season. Still can't believe we made it all the way through the season during this COVID-19 pandemic. But Mark gives his thoughts about the season and also the impact on college recruiting going forward as we approach signing day in mid-December. This High School Insider podcast is presented by our local Greater Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky Chick-fil-A restaurants. Fall is sweeter with a chocolate fudge brownie or mocha cream cold brew. Get yours today. But first, I want to mention a couple things I have on WCPO.com right now. You want to check out my feature story on Loveland girls basketball coach Darnell Parker as he continues his perseverance with a diagnosis of colon and liver cancer back in late October. And Darnell is definitely an inspirational story, especially this week. He's celebrating his 43rd birthday on Thanksgiving, and his positive outlook on life each and every day is inspiring others. And also the greater Cincinnati girls basketball community is also uplifting him and his family with gifts and donations and just plain support for Darnell as he continues his battle with that. Also want to check out my story about Roger Bacon girls basketball standout Kylie Shepard. That's right now on WCPO.com. She's a two-sport star in soccer and in basketball, leader on and off the court, on and off the pitch. And everybody who knows Kylie there at Roger Bacon raves about her. She is headed to Providence College on a basketball scholarship, but kind of get into the details of how she's prepared for this upcoming season for the Spartans. I want to remind everybody this High School Insider podcast is presented by our local Greater Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky Chick-fil-A restaurants, where the winning play is always chicken. Log into the Chick-fil-A app for easy ordering. Well, all 7 divisions of the Ohio High School Football State Finals wrapped up this past week, and I thought it was a great opportunity to check in with my good friend Mark Porter at ScoutingOhio.com. He's based up in Youngstown, but he travels all around the state during the entire season, checking out players and teams and trying to get evaluations for college scouts for the upcoming class, whether it be 2021, 2022. He's gathering film and information about all these student athletes, but I had a chance to catch up with Mark and get his thoughts about this unique season and what we might see from college football recruiting going forward. Mark, it's always great to catch up with you, and how are you and your family doing?
Great. As a football season ends, that's one hump out of my life I get done right now. So I'm on the next hump of evaluation, but thank you for having me. And I appreciate you talking about Scouting Ohio in the past and now, and I'm sure it's going to help some kids out in the Cincinnati area.
Well, you definitely do a great job, great advocate for high school football and around the state of Ohio. I want to talk about college football recruiting, obviously, but let's just take a look back as we look at this Ohio high school football season from 2020. You and I have, traded texts and emails and had conversations prior to even the start of the season back in August, where there was so much uncertainty. But obviously, the 6 remaining state championships were completed this past weekend in Massillon, and after a lot of blowouts, there were actually 3 really close games, divisions 3, 4, and 6, decided by 3 points each, including a double overtime game with Chardon beating Columbus DeSales. But give me your impressions of maybe this football season, as shortened as it was, as unique as it was. What will you remember most about this campaign?
Yeah, you know what? Appreciation. I think I was a glass half full at the beginning of football season thinking, boy, I don't know if we're going to get through it. I thought that once these kids started going into protocols, games would get canceled and it would be bad. And I was hoping that we would get 3 or 4 games in and some seniors would be able to play and put film out to colleges, and that part of their life could, be a little bit normal. But for us to get all 13 weeks in, I can't believe it. And each week I covered it, I think I just appreciated so much more that, wow, when something like this can be taken away, you don't realize how much you love it, how much the kids love it, how much the community loves it, and the risk that they're all willing to take to keep it going forward. I'll remember that. A lot of people did not want any sports and still don't want sports to go on in these gatherings. And it's really, but these kids, they wore masks, they stayed away, they somehow got through it. Yeah, there were cancellations, but I think that was just going to be par for the course for this year. So, like I said, appreciation. I can't believe we got it done, and I appreciate all the hard work everybody did to make this go off.
Kind of go back to what St. Xavier coach Steve Speck told me toward the end of the season. He just said it was a matter of clearing the mechanism, getting rid of the noise, within his own program. Obviously, that really paid dividends, as you could see in a big 41-point win over Pickerington Central. But he said, all the kids deserve the credit. The coaches, administration, we put in the policies and have to follow all the measures, but really at the end of the day, it was the kids that made this work. As you say, how amazing is that to say that, we got through this entire season?
I mean, really, there was a lot of sacrifice there. A lot of things these kids have given up. And for young kids, I didn't see them the sacrificing type. I wasn't the sacrificing type at 18. I wanted to go have fun and see my friends, but to do what they did to get through it, as I said, I appreciate that everybody did it. It's great.
What impact does this have now as we go forward? We look ahead to it's still called the early signing period, but I think everybody's kind of considering the regular period from December 16th to 18th. The NCAA Division I Council has extended the dead period until April 15th, obviously for those players that are not seniors this year and not signing. So I guess, first of all, talk about the senior class, maybe for 2021, and how this impacts maybe those that are uncommitted up until signing period.
Yeah, you know me, I'm pretty pragmatic, and the recruiting process is usually not fair. It's usually very tough on kids and players. And the class of 2021 really got dealt a tough blow. This was, I wouldn't be able to speak honestly to you if I didn't say this was probably the worst thing that could ever happen to a senior class. Not having the summer camps, not being able to visit the campuses, having limited contact with coaches. That's just such an obstacle that, and then now with some of these colleges where they might let the kids have an extra year of eligibility, there might be shorter scholarship numbers, and some of these kids might be getting cut out of their classes. I have never seen anything like this, and a lot of kids did the smart thing and signed early. We had a record number of commitments come in July, August, that type of time. So a lot of kids smelled this in the air that I better take my scholarship and lock it down in this new world of COVID. But this is definitely different. This class of 2021 right here, coming up to the signing day, it's a mad scramble because you really can't get on these campuses. The coaches can't get into your school. All you can do is communicate like we're doing through Zoom meetings and emails and Twitters. And, there's only so much there you get when you actually, see someone in person or see a campus in person, let alone be able to test them on an athletic field. So this has really been an uphill battle for 2020.
I had you on the podcast back in June. I went back and listened to it this morning, and you said it's already a crazy process with the recruiting for a student athlete. It's pull your hair out type of thing for the parents and everything, and then you add all this into it. What kind of things did you hear maybe from families, from college programs, and not necessarily the bigger college programs either, or maybe just coaches about how they could get their student athlete to be highlighted this year?
Yeah, from the players and parents, you just had an overwhelming sense of fear and anxiety. A lot of those emails and Twitters that were sent, colleges didn't reply. And sometimes parents can accept a no, but they would just like to hear the no. The unknown is where your mind wanders and where the anxiety starts. And did they even get it? Did they get it and watch it and not like it? And so you're left in that world of how do I know? And I think there's a lot of that out there for those kids. As far as college coaches, they're very frustrated, but I'll say this, back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there were no camps, combines, 40 times, stuff like that. And all the evaluations were done on film and great teams were built. So I think the evaluations went very film heavy, very high school coach recommended. His word was more than it's ever been before because he's the only one you can really talk to about the kid and get his background. You're not going to see them at, the camps and talk to their strength coaches and trainers and handlers or, that whole organization of things. You lost out on a massive amount of conversations that happen at these camps, and that's info. So it was all done film. It was all done Zoom meeting and email, which, one part of me wonders, how will these classes shape out in a couple of years? Will this maybe be, and this is just something I'm speaking out loud, because they did the evaluations based on film, will they be getting a lot of great football players? Because there were a lot of T-shirt All-Americans that would show up at camps and run a great time, and you'd watch the film and say, boy, I wouldn't have normally thought about offering this kid, but because he ran this such and such time, I think I'm going to offer him. And sometimes those would or wouldn't work out. And, it's a percentage thing. What percentage of those were hits? What percentage were misses? But I think I like when you see a football player on tape and you bring that guy in, that football player should hold up. Now, hopefully he's as fast as you need him to be in his statistic checkout. But what a weird season. I mean, so that's why we could probably talk about this for a whole podcast. So many different angles to look at.
How do you think this impacts like Division III programs, such as Mount St. Joseph and some of these other programs down here in Cincinnati?
Yeah, that's really tough. They're picking up the scraps usually, from the leftovers from the Division I, Division II. But Division III to me has always been about kids that want to play football very bad in college. And I don't think that's gone away. And I think Division III is, if you're an all-conference, all-state player, and there's a lot of those in Ohio, you can go play Division III football if you have the work ethic and you'll sit there and grind for a couple of years. Those kids usually come out great in the wash. So, yeah, that Division III is going to have to wait, till after signing day, and that's process a little further down the road. But they'll get their players. That will trickle down into them.
What about just the techniques of recruiting? We kind of read when the NCAA extended this dead period that they're still allowing a lot of virtual objectives or virtual ways of recruiting a player. I read something on CBSSports.com. The Florida coach Dan Mullen told CBS that everyone's become efficient at Zoom. And he quoted, maybe you don't even have to go on the road recruiting anymore in the future. You can just do it on Zoom. Now, he acknowledged, obviously, that you want to show a recruit the palm trees and the bright sunshine and everything else like that, and you can't do that on Zoom necessarily. But how do you think this has impacted college programs and the way they connect with kids?
You nail it. That's right where I was going. The college coaches are a heels in the ground bunch about technology. They're usually old school guys, and they're hand-to-hand combat out on the field, and all this technology stuff doesn't help win football games. Well, now you have guys, and I've done Zoom meetings with guys that I never thought I'd see on a Zoom meeting, that are now proficient about doing Zoom meetings with their players at home. And it's one of those things where I don't like this until you sat at your house like this and done a few Zoom meetings. You say, you know what? I didn't have to run into the office this morning. I didn't have to do the traffic. I got to bang this out real quick. I saw all my players. There's going to be techniques that they learn during this COVID period that they keep, that they're going to streamline processes, and they brought new technologies and things in there, but it forced their hand. Like I said, this isn't something college coaches like. They're a copycat bunch. The NFL's a copycat league. If someone else is doing this, we do the same thing, and we don't change it if it's not broken. And they're almost how do I say, a superstitious bunch, where we're not going to go different ways. What if we lose? Everyone's going to say it was because we started doing Zoom meetings first, and our players weren't as focused, and they didn't get the learning. But now you're seeing on the field, and even in NFL, wow, these kids, some of them didn't practice all week. Some of them just did Zoom meetings. Some of them are in quarantine. They show up on a game day and they perform at whatever level. If it's good enough, you're going to see a case made for these techniques and this type of stuff to go on. But that's really been it. Virtual tours. I think we talked about that the first time. How into it are coaches getting with a virtual tour? But it seems like coaches were bringing players into their home because they were doing the meetings from their home. So you were getting to see a coach, and it's different. It really is. I think, like I said, these techniques will go into the future.
I know you traveled around the state watching high school football, like you usually do each season. I mean, maybe going forward now, as you kind of look into 2022 and beyond, I mean, were you impressed with a certain position group or certain area of the state in particular that really caught your eye during your travels?
Yeah, I've always, since I've been doing this, Cincinnati and Columbus and Cleveland, which makes total sense. They're the population dense areas. Those teams and those programs are probably more developed, and they're so much deeper in those areas. So that's where I have respect for everybody. Youngstown has been down in Toledo. I go up there, and there's certain hotbeds, but it's just not like the dense population areas. And, football is different. Now the crowds haven't been the same, and, numbers have been down. There's a lot more options. So I've seen that over the past couple of years. But again, I think football almost being taken away this year, you saw the appreciation of how much they wanted it. You heard the outcry for football. It was for other sports, but football was the one that, really brought everyone back together here. And then, I saw a lot of things on the road this year that were just the way the games were handled, the online broadcasting. That's something that high schools have had their heels in the ground about, where not all of them were broadcasting on the internet or something like that for games. And all of a sudden that may be a new norm going into the future where, you're going to have a lot more options on a Friday night. If you want to stay at home and watch 3 or 4 different games, if you were in, really in high school football or guys like us that, could kill more birds in that way. But here in town, I mean, I'd get back into town Monday and almost every single game was archived on the internet somewhere if you want to go watch it. So, a lot of new things happened this year.
Definitely going to be interesting to see how athletic directors and athletic departments are going to figure out ways for ticket revenue when, you consider all the options, as you just mentioned, that are available. I'd like you to put your high school football hat on for a second. Not that we haven't been talking about it, but just maybe from a coach's perspective or just a fan perspective. What do you think of the playoffs, of everybody getting in the playoffs? I heard a lot of debate on, no, it should definitely be earned. I mean, as of now, obviously the OHSA is going to go back to the computer point system for next season. It's going to expand from 8 to 12 teams per region. This is not a recruiting question, but did you like everybody getting in the postseason and coaches voting for the seeds, or would you prefer just the points?
This is the second time I've been asked this, so I've thought about it a couple of times, and it's a very interesting question. That whole it's got to be earned thing. Well, yeah, week 1, earn it. There is still an earned type of thing to it. And hey, maybe you get a freebie week 1, or maybe you get a team that's going to smack you in the face. But it put a lot more home games, playoff games, in the hands of, good teams. So that revenue for them is something they're going to like, so that's going to be something that, boy, we saw, well, maybe we could do this. This could be maybe implemented in the future. Even if you use computer points to start off the whole system, there's something to it where, hey, we start the playoffs in week 8 now, and the season's shortened, and other teams can keep playing, and you always get a 10-game season. Because I noticed there were a lot of teams that once they were knocked out of the playoffs, they were still playing. People were still scheduling games, and so that was a nice little thing. And I don't know. I mean, more is always better. It seems like 15 games is better than 13, but that system was interesting. It wasn't a disaster. It went off okay. I don't like the improprieties in the playoffs where there's a big score versus a blowout. In a lot of those first round games, that's the one flaw I saw. But we see state championship games where they're blowing each other out. Powerful teams are powerful teams. They show up and, different sides of the state, have different power things different year. You never know where that's going to come from. But I think it's debatable. I don't think it's a home run. I don't think it, whatever. But I think they came up with a very interesting system in a crunch right there.
Just curious, do college coaches put more stake in a regular season / playoff game than they would a game that's, where a team is knocked out and you're playing week 11 like you did this year against a non-playoff opponent?
Yeah. Doesn't that seem like common sense that it would be? It's one of those questions where it should be, as long as the competition, it's not a 35-0 game. I know players that'll have a running clock and they were named, radio station player of the game. And they're like, hey, I had a great game. And I'm like, ugh, you did, and as an adult, you want to be so genuine, like you did have a good game, but I'd rather see you do that in a 29-28 playoff game. And then, boy, now I know we got something, because when I watch the film, I know you're going to just be, beating up on a team that's not on your level. And, that may, increase statistics, stuff like that. But anytime you can get a competitive game as far as a scout or college coach, that's what you're looking for, and these mercy rule games would be the opposite of what you'd want to play.
Were you inundated with more film or more content this year from coaches? Did you notice people trying to sell their players more, or not necessarily because of all this?
Yeah, I've always done a lot of work by email, text messages, stuff like that. So, yeah, and I think coaches halfway through this season were a lot more, hey, this is the only way we can do this, so this is the way we're doing it. It kind of forced their hand where I can't use all these other avenues. So Mark and these other guys that do this, it seemed very normal for me. And I was very happy about that, because I wasn't sure what to expect. Can we pull this off without summer camps and whatnot?
So what do you do next?
And I think the recruiting nights are the next thing that, I go around and I'll see high school coaches, and I just got the first invitation for a Zoom recruiting night where, different coaches are going to go on and have their 3 or 4 minutes, and all the college coaches are going to sit there and be able to watch him talk about his players. And there's a new way to do that. So that's my next phase here. Signing day is obviously for the class of 21, but I'm working on 22 and 23 now, because obviously when that day hits, the focus has already gone to 22 and 23 for a lot of programs, but it will be solely 22 and 23 kids after that. So yeah, I'm always a year or two ahead, and it's Groundhog Day for Mark Porter with football right now. It's like people joke with this quarantine. I'm like, yeah, I go into a football quarantine right about now anyway, so I don't leave the computer or office. But that's the next step for me, and I almost feel that I have more pressure this year because Scouting Ohio is one of the more intense veins for college coaches right now. Like, boy, I don't want to miss a kid. And I know there's kids that haven't signed up yet, and I'm chasing them down. And every time I send out a report, I feel like, wow, those kids not being in this report is stinging a little more this year because, I didn't get them in there yet. So I think I feel it from that perspective.
Things change so quickly, so rapidly. I'm old enough to remember when you had recruiting night in person at a high school. How about that? That was just a few years ago. Mark, how do people connect with you? How do they follow you? And just give us some information about that.
Yeah, scoutingohio.com is the site. My Twitter is on the Scouting Ohio. My email is on Scouting Ohio. On Twitter, I'm Mark. It's the 2_ Porter. All those places you can reach me. I'll pretty much get back to everybody when they send me their link. But if kids sign up on the site for free that want to get recruited, I watch their film, write an evaluation. They go and report to 80 colleges. And those are the 80 colleges that actually recruit Ohio. I know a lot of kids will say, hey, I want to go to Florida State and UCLA and Texas. I tell the kids, show me the Ohio kid on those rosters in the past 10 years. And okay, we'll try to. But I really have a good group of 80 colleges that if you look on their rosters, you'll see a lot of Ohio players.
Very practical and very honest with the whole entire process. And as you mentioned, the players can connect with you for free. It's not not one of those things where you have to worry about anything else. And you always offer some very sage advice for everybody who follows high school football and recruiting as well. Mark, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Happy holidays to you and your family.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. I'm lucky to do it, and I appreciate your support over the years. Good luck and happy holidays.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank scoutingohio.com director Mark Porter for all his analysis about high school football and the college football recruiting scene going forward. Certainly a lot to follow as we look at all levels of college football recruiting going forward and how this impacts high school seniors and juniors as they make these important decisions. You want to continue to follow us, WCPO 9 Sports. We will have all the latest for you about the information regarding winter sports season during this COVID-19 pandemic. Also on WCPO.com, check out my story about Walnut Hills football coach Jerry Beauchamp, who announced that he is stepping down as of this week. And we're going to continue to watch a lot of coaching openings around the area in football. Taylor coach Mark Miller also announced after 4 seasons he is stepping down as well. Want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for following the WCPO High School Insider podcast, especially during this Ohio high school football season. And we will be back with more coverage as we continue to follow off-season football news and also the winter sports season right here on the WCPO High School Insider podcast. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next week.